Knight of Knives is the first book in the novels of the Malazan Empire series, which are written by E.N.C. Esslemont. It is an epic high fantasy story that takes place over the course of a single night on the fictional island of Malaz.
We know that both the Malazan authors like to throw us into the narrative with very little hand-holding and exposition.
So we figured if you're listening to this podcast with this title, you probably like the same too. And so we are just going to start talking about the book and see where it leads us.
In case you're not aware, this episode contains spoilers for the Knight of Knives, obviously, and the first 6 books of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. That is up to the Bonehunters. Anyway, just sit back or jog or drive or what have you, and enjoy the discussion. Alright, so this is your first time reading the book, yes? The first time you're reading the series. I've reread the series, so I'm gonna refrain a bit from talking too much and hogging the spotlight, so to speak. We are mostly doing spoilers up to publication order with some modifications. So this specific episode will have spoilers up to the Bonehunters from the Book of the Fallen.
Thing is, I have actually read this book before. But the problem was I expected it to be extremely simple and extremely easy to follow. So I don't think I concentrated much, and so I didn't enjoy the book the first time. I don't know why this time it just clicked. Everything worked together, and I really love this book now. And I really like Esslemont's writing.
On my first go, I actually read this book, I read publication order. So I read this book right after Midnight Tides. I did speed through the book. I read it in 2 days. I was glued to the page quite a bit, but there were a lot of things I didn't know at the time. So I liked the book. It was enjoyable, but I didn't pay much attention either. A lot of people complain about the prose of Esslemont compared to Erikson's. I like the succinctness of it. His sentences feel smaller, but more to the point. He sets the atmosphere very well. There's a lot of very beautiful actual imaging. The images he creates and evokes are very nice. Overall, I enjoyed the book a lot more this time around. I think you might have noticed by our discussions.
Yeah. No, why do you think that is? Because...
what exactly? That I enjoyed the book more?
No, in the sense... we tend to think that Esslemont's writing is much simpler, and so you don't need to think too much about it, or you can just, skim through the book. Unlike Erikson, I felt that Esslemont's is equally complex. I had to focus.
I think it's down to there's less philosophizing in the book, less internal monologues and stuff. Whereas in Erikson, people talk, and most of the information comes up through dialogue, and you have to pay attention to basically what everyone is saying, and then figure out through the narration and through the different POVs what is real and what isn't, where Esslemont doesn't evoke that as strongly. It is present, it happens. Both our characters' philosophy in this book, Kiska and Tempa, aren't as big on the philosophy. They focus on more things, different aspects of their lives. And it's up to preference mostly. I personally like it more when not every single character in every book is a philosopher.
Yeah, but to be fair, Erikson didn't start all that at least till Midnight Tides. Till House of Chains, I think it was just action and people moving around and dialogue.
Yes. I know I didn't mind it the first time around. I think a lot of people that read Knight of Knives read it right after they finish the series or after a few years have passed or something. It's also important to note that Knight of Knives was written either at the same time or before Gardens of the Moon. It's a very old book.
Are you sure? I thought Return of the Crimson Guard is what he wrote first, but then he wrote...
I think Knight of Knives was written right after this, yeah. I think Return of the Crimson Guard was written first, was the first book set in the Malaz world, and then Gardens was written, and then Knight of Knives. But the point is, all of the books were written before the two of them were actually established authors. A lot of people are forgiving towards Gardens of the Moon because, it's an old book, it was written a decade ago, it's whatever. Then Hatchgate picks up and becomes a lot better. But nobody feels like they're as forgiving of Knight of Knives for the very same reason, which I'm not going to say it's hypocrisy. I don't think it's wrong necessarily, but it is something to keep in mind.
No, the point is I didn't find this to be a weak book at all.
I think people just compare a lot with the later works of Erikson, yes.
I had to put some effort. I couldn't just read it like any other short novella set in one night and just, people running around and murdering each other. It wasn't like that. I had to focus.
Speaking of which, we should probably get into the book now.
Yeah.
So...
Can I ask you something? No, before you picked it up, what did you expect to read?
I read Knight of Knives, I read the summary, and I was like, okay, this is the night where Kieran and Dancer die, and I get to see the assassinations, how they happened. and how we ended up with the two of them being ascended in Deadhouse Gates. I was curious because I wanted to learn how did the two of them actually end up ascending, and all the different points of view and all the different versions of the story that we hear. There's a lot of conflict. So I wanted something that's unambiguous. I didn't quite get that, but that's what I was expecting.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, because we thought this book is about that entire night, and we are going to see these two, missing emperor and his partner come back and do something and just become gods overnight. We really don't see that, All we get is this two fellas crawling into the house, and that was the back gate. So we didn't really get what was promised, but, it was still very enjoyable.
I think the best way to actually display that is precisely as you said. They have some sort of conceit, some grand conceit of grandeur about themselves, that they're somehow bigger than life, and they're going to waltz in and take the Shadow House, and it's going to be great and whatnot. Instead, they're like in rags, trying to crawl through the house, while everyone else that's actually involved in this is too busy about a much bigger threat than the two of them. Edgewalker even says, in the grand scheme of things, this is relatively minor. We can let them be, because there's a much bigger threat right now in the background that we don't actually deal with in person. Neither of our protagonists actually deal with the protagonists, POV characters I should say, actually deals with the threat that is the Riders. The Riders and Jenna, which apparently summons them, the Draghood and Deadhouse. And Edgewalker is working against this, Agela, Titran and Obo are working against this, and in the meantime we just have two relatively normal people trying to live their lives in an island where they spend most of their time for the past year. Kiska has spent her entire life here, and they're basically none the wiser that a catastrophe is heading their way tonight. So in a way, it's sort of a subversion that you were expecting to see to like Kellervet and Dancer like ascend and fight off Surly and her claws and stuff. Instead, they both go down and essentially scoot and leave, while having set things up so that they can get to where they need to go without disturbances. We see that throughout the city before the assassination actually occurred with the Shadow Cult. We see the Bridge Burners, As and Corin. We see, and then they make a deal with Temper. And we also see the Hounds unleashed in Malaz City, which I'm not sure why Rude was actually there, but that's not the problem. I assume you might have something to say about that.
No, I think the Hounds just came because it was Shadow Moon. So all the portals are open and they just roam around.
Right, that's a very obvious answer, and I completely missed it. Thank you. This is why we do this kind of podcast, because I'm stupid sometimes and I miss the obvious. So there's large threats looming over Malaz City, and in the grand scheme of things, what you think is going to be the actual central theme of the book, it ends up being minor. Something small.
Something that happens every once in a while. There's a new ruler, and then they get destroyed.
Yes, and Edgewalker is just sick of this whole thing. Like, maybe something will actually change, but it won't actually. In a few millennia or something, they'll be gone and we'll be back to normal. It just happens.
But can you add something more? Because we think the Riders is the overwhelming problem, and that's what the others are facing and all, right? But
yes.
But yeah, that is also subverted, right? At the end, you find out that the Riders are probably not coming to hurt them. When the old grandfather kills this one rider. So I don't know. Maybe the whole threat is something they have just built it up in their minds, and there is no real threat. I don't know. Maybe the rest of the books have this detail, but as far as I can see, probably there is just some misunderstanding. You can't comment?
That is a very good point. So I think you mentioned at some point about an Omtos glacier in Shadow. I think what's actually going on here is somehow, for some reason, XYZ reason, Jenna, the Draghood in the Dead House, is letting out a summons, so to speak, to the Riders. So the Riders are heading to Malaz City not because they're malicious or because they want to kill the people there, but because they're answering a summons, a call of someone, of some creature they can't resist necessarily. So, on one hand, that's dangerous because if they actually assist Jenna might take over Emerlan, and that'd be bad news, right? Because, for one, the Dead House will have no guardian. Two, a prisoner of the Azad House getting out is almost never good news. Three, a Draghood with more power at their disposal is not really a good idea, erased. So we don't really want that. So in a way, it is a very real threat. This is a threat that people in the know, so like Agela, Obo, Tyshren, Edgewalker, recognize as a real threat. and they prioritize it over anything else, because the people in Malaz City probably don't actually know why the riders are coming. They don't know. It's because a Jaghood sent out a summons to them, and they're now heading over to the city to wreak havoc. But they recognize that it is a problem.
Sorry,
yes,
the epilogue, the grandfather, he seems to take it as if it's something that happens every once in a while. So he just happily goes up and slits the throat of this rider who's caught there. So I think the whole island knows about this threat. I don't think it's something exclusive to all these powerful people.
I think the difference is that Agela and the rest understand that this isn't happenstance. This doesn't happen every once in a while. It's not like if you know about the storm wall from Corel, where they have built an entire wall. They have built an entire wall to ward off rider attacks. This Malaz Island doesn't have one.
Yeah.
So evidently this happens often enough because Malaz is situated on the Sea of Storms and it borders it, and the riders have claimed dominion over the Sea of Storms, and you're in the way. So of course there's going to be rider attacks on Malaz Isle every now and then, but it's not. It's more often happenstance. It might be like 1 or 2 or 3 riders that happen, and then you see there's the Obo mentions this about there being a lot of talent and warring users and sequences. And the reason he gives for that is because they have to ward off Malaz Isle from rider attacks. They hide it. That's what Daishan and Agela and Obo do. That's why they're so exhausted, because they essentially have to hide or ward off the riders from attacking the island. Here, it's far more coordinated. We see the rider mages with their amethyst wands and the robes and stuff. And you mentioned that you really like their imaging.
Yeah, I did.
Well, obviously, if they are coming over and Tobin the fisherman is dying because of them, we're in big trouble, right? It's not just a random attack that happened. Something is going on. And Edgewalker also notices this problem of the glacier in Emorlan. And everyone kind of picks up that this doesn't just happen. Everyone in the ground, like the fisherman you noticed, the grandfather at the end, which just goes up and slits the throat of the rider, which is brutal, by the way. That was uncalled for.
No, if you ask me, I'm just checking that probably the epilogue doesn't have any chronological place here. You know, it could have happened any time. This rider getting caught here and the grandfather slitting the throat. It need not be an actual, aftermath of what happened in this book, right? There is no time. Yeah, I'm just checking. There's no year or time given.
Yeah, there isn't actually. I don't actually know when it takes place.
Yeah, as you said, it could be just happenstance. Once in a while a rider is caught and one of the elders just kill him and move on.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So this is different. Plus, it's another Shadow Moon where we are constantly given warnings about fiends and wars will reign this night. So obviously, whatever is happening, whatever is going on, it's not happenstance. It doesn't happen very often or often enough for there to be. So Tyshren, for example, doesn't seem to care until he understands the larger picture. Because if it's just about the residents of Malaz Isle, he's kind of iffy on protecting them because he doesn't care as much. But when Agela brings up the fisherman, who usually is tasked with protecting against rider attacks, is dead, that's when he realizes that something is up. And that's when he commits himself fully. What do you think of that exactly? Yeah,
he uses some warren and looks, he sees how deeper the threat goes. And then he gets scared. And that's when he commits himself. The light warren. How do you pronounce it? The Tyr warren? Thyr warren?
Yes, I think it's Tyr, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
The light warren.
The light, yeah, exactly. So he uses that and sees actually. And that's when he understands how widespread this attack is going to be.
Mm-hmm. So what did you think of this whole thing? The Jenna, the summons, the Rainey's Dream that we see, the mages, the riders. Since you haven't actually read anything much about the riders other than the main series, which we see a few people affiliated with the riders later in the series.
I don't remember much about the riders. I was just,
Exactly.
What is this new threat coming out of nowhere?
It ends with, why are you killing us? Because they don't know either. They don't know why people are hostile to them. So what did you think of that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That maybe, it's all just a big misunderstanding. Maybe they're answering summons, or maybe they're actually escaping something and, trying to find refuge with Malaz Island.
Let's hold that thought for a later book. So, moving on from that, we first see Temper in Malaz Isle in garrison duty. So, before I go into my thoughts about Temper, because you might have seen I have a lot, what did you think of him as a character? We've seen him in the Book of the Fallen before. We kind of know how he ends up and what he does, but this is how he is now, before everything happened, which made Temper the way he is.
Does he come up in Book of the Fallen after Bonehunters or before?
Well, I mean, we see Temper in the Bonehunters being the guardian of the dead house, which we see him end up being at the end of the Night of Knives.
But he was not the guardian here. He left it and he went up to Mock's Hold to continue his morning shift. So I was very surprised to see that. Isn't the guardian supposed to be like somebody who can't leave?
I think he can't leave Malazan as a whole, but he can stay and go on with his duties.
He can't leave the Azad house is what I thought.
I don't believe so, else Gothos wouldn't be anywhere.
Does Gothos get out of his house?
Well, not voluntarily, not often. I mean, he is more than happy to stay because he's letting off his folly, but we're getting off track here. The point is, I think Temper cannot leave Malazan, but he can leave the dead house just fine.
That doesn't make sense, it's not consistent. Because Jenna was actively stopped. They put up a firewall to stop her from getting out.
Because the difference between Jenna and Temper is that Jenna was a prisoner of the Azad house. They mentioned this. So Jenna was taken by the house.
True.
Temper was chosen by the house. That's the difference. So before we get into more spoilers about, what did you think about Temper in this book?
Temper, I loved him. Oh, he's one of the best characters I've read in this. Because I liked him so much. I liked all the flashbacks. And his place in the First Sword. Yeah, the first thing I really liked is his name. Because obviously I didn't know what Temper stood for.
Mm-hmm.
But as part of the First Sword, he's the process which makes the sword strong. So all the others are just nouns and he's the only action word. So that is one thing I liked. And he thinks of himself as that, right? He thinks of himself as somebody who can't break, who did not break before. So I like the wordplay of that. And yeah, and I don't know. He was a nice stand-up type of character, which you will expect from any Malazan veteran.
Right. I think what makes Temper work as a whole is his, first of all, the fact that, as you said, he thinks of himself as someone who doesn't break.
Yeah.
Right? He's very stubborn, has a very strong willpower. And the second thing is, one thing you mentioned, his flashbacks, his history as a soldier of the Empire and a member of the Sword, and what happened at Yigatan, which we're going to touch on now. We've seen another siege at Yigatan, but even that siege in the Bonehunters, Yigatan always seemed to have this reputation we hear about it as being a swear word, a curse in the Malazan army, that Yigatan has this sort of negative connotation in the Malazan army. And when Leoman flees to Yigatan in the Bonehunters, everyone's kind of dreading the whole situation. And for good reason, we see the reason. And now we see why they actually dread it even before they get to the area. Because we learned that Yigatan is not a particularly significant city. All the other of the 7 holy cities that have been proclaimed as holy by the Faladan have been taken. They have. We even see what happens to the Falad of Ubarid in another flashback. But we're not going to touch on that because that's brutal. The claw are not very nice, are they? But for some reason, and the Malazans don't understand, now we know from meta perspective, from the other series, that Yigatan was actually the first holy city, the most ancient of the holy cities. And it was consecrated to some goddess about fertility and olive oil and stuff like that, or we see in the Bonehunters. But the Malazans at the time don't know this. They think it's just another city that self-proclaimed itself holy because everything else gone, so might as well. But everyone is fighting with so much fanaticism, so much, and Temper notices this and says something along the lines of the people of the city are fighting so much more ferociously, and they're standing where they otherwise would break.
He has a small explanation for that, why these people are fighting so ferociously. Because they have been promised salvation or something, right? Whoever whoever breaks the first sword or something.
Whoever fights Dassem and dies by his hand is promised martyrdom, but even the regulars fighting the Malazan army are fighting much more ferociously than they would otherwise, both in the face of munitions, or Dassem, as I've mentioned, or general marines and heavies of the Malazan army, where they would had basically no trouble taking all of the other 7 cities. This one specific city, they're fighting so much more ferociously that the siege is prolonging itself much more than they would otherwise expect. And then we brought to the scene where Sergen commits himself to the field, and Dassem and his sword march to meet him. So, before I continue narrating the story, what did you think of that? The betrayal, essentially, of the sword, and the breaking of the sword.
Yeah, I'm firmly thinking that the betrayal happened on both ends. One who betrayed him by, I don't know, probably patronizing the opposite army. I'm just guessing here. And second thing, I have a feeling Surly did something. She probably made sure the commanders couldn't reach the first sword on time. Maybe orchestrated some miscommunications in it, because we see she has changed the commanders, right? Instead of Whiskey Jack, I think somebody else, some Chauce or somebody takes over the third army. So I have a feeling the betrayal happened on both sides, right? And that's why Dassem nearly died.
So I don't believe Hood had anything to do with it. If nothing else, Hood's the one that saved Dassem later. But we'll get to that. So you said something about Hood patronizing the other army, Sergen or something?
Yeah.
Did I catch that right? I don't think Hood had anything to do with this, strictly because when it's the last city and has proclaimed itself the holy city and people have been promised martyrdom, and is a very strong motivator to fight harder. So I think that's natural. What I do think you're right in that someone, for some reason, is withholding reinforcements.
Yeah, we know who that someone is.
Well, we know who that someone is, but we'll get to that. Dassem is the overall commander of the Third Army right now, or rather the commander-in-chief of all Malazan forces. So he perforce commands the Third, and so they are expecting reinforcements. This is not the first time the sword has committed itself to Yigatan, fought for a day, they were relieved by the regulars, and then they retreated back to continue the siege. This time it's different, and to make it more pronounced, Dassem gets shot in the back.
In the back? Are you sure?
I'm sure.
No, he just screams and doubles over, and he clutches something to his chest or something. Isn't that the description?
I'm quite sure one of the claws shot him in the back. Point is, he's shot by something, he's not relieved by anything, and then Surly essentially says, well, gent, it's been great, thank you for your service, you're going to die. Because I cannot leave witnesses to the murder of Dasemulto, for obvious reasons, right? It says, Surgeon attacked with both swords and Dassem countered, is by the blur. Then a flash across Temper's vision, and Dassem gasped, bowed forward as if cradling a wound. Another attack, which he didn't see, by Sergen. An arrow or a bolt, Temper could not be sure what he saw. Sergen was also startled, so he didn't do it, but instantly pressed his advantage. One-handed, Dassem fended off the blows, while grasping at his chest, while in an edge broke formation to interpose themselves. So, there's a few things that could happen here. One, someone got an insanely lucky shot from the battlements of Yigatan, and shot in front of, like, the entire army of 7 cities, shot Dassem in the chest. In general, I don't even think they would be within range of the battlements, and that would be an incredibly risky shot to take, because you could also hit your own soldiers, or he was shot in the chest from one of his own, presumably the claw, because, well, this is early we're talking about.
Yeah.
Alternatively, none of the above happened, and he got shot by someone else, for example. But the point remains, both Sergen and Surly later took advantage of Dassem's weakness, the former for, defeating him. He didn't kill him because Temper is insane and stubborn and amazing.
Yeah.
But then we see the scene with Surly in the tent where he's like, Sergen is slowly succumbing to his wounds, hint, and Dasemulto and the sword has been dissolved and you're all free to go and you can give it like a regional command or something. But we have to take care of Dassem, and then they leave the 4 claws to kill them.
Yeah. I was just thinking, because, in the flashback, Temper keeps referring to Hood and keeps talking about Hood's parts opening up and all that. Maybe because he believes Dassem's belief that Hood betrayed him because he renounced Hood's servitude apparently after Hood took away his daughter.
That is true.
So I'm just thinking that Hood might have done something,
If that were the case, if Temper did believe that, I don't think he would do what he did later, where he stabs Dassem in the chest and Dassem's arm shoots up to grab him.
So what happened there?
Hood happened.
Did he stab him? It just says he brought it down with his whole strength,
yes.
And then his hand grabbed him.
He tried to. He stopped.
He was stopped, right.
So, evidently, Hood hasn't given up on Dassem entirely. right? He did say it was going to be his last battle.
He did, yeah.
Also, since you mentioned this, since you brought this up, it is quite interesting that Dassem doesn't think he can escape Hood easily. So they're talking about Dassem's last battle, that he thinks is the last battle. So Temper goes, the last one then. Dassem glanced over, his dark eyes softening. Aye, the last. Temper thought of all he had heard whispered from so many sources, pacts and vows sworn to the Hooded One himself. Steeling himself, he ventured, you can't just walk away. Dassem slapped at the dust coating his long circlet of burgundy and grey, the imperial scepter at his chest. That's the last of my worries, Temper. There are plenty of others, all too eager to do his work. Lady knows they're practically lined up. It can't be that easy. Easy! The first sword's black eyes blazed, and Temper checked back a step. Dassem passed one gauntleted hand across his eyes, as if wiping away a vision of horror. His long black hair, plaited back and tied at his neck, lashed in the wind like the horsetail plume at the helmet under his arm. He shaded his gaze to scan the battle. He made a mistake, he whispered aloud. Temper wondered, was this meant to be overheard? All that has ever mattered to me has been taken. I have nothing left to lose. So...
yeah, he is whining.
I think he's whining, yes, but clearly there's something there.
He's not even addressing Hood directly. He's just complaining.
Think so? Alright. We'll leave this up to interpretation.
Right.
So, and now we have his flashbacks out of the way. What did you think of his more worldly things? His
present day status.
Yes, so to speak.
Yeah, he's just whiling away his time. He thinks his life is over. The biggest high of his life is done. He's retired. He just wants to get drunk and, get the easiest job possible. I think that's what he's up to. If none of this had happened, this shadow moon and all, he would have just kept drinking at Coops, trying to hit on Corin and failing. Probably that's all his life was meant to be, right? At least that's what he thought.
Yeah. So, what does this lead us, of course? So, I think, I told you this before, but I think Temper is actually a pretty good representation of what a veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder would be.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about this portrayal is that he's not portrayed as helpless. He's not portrayed as self-pitying. He still finds small joys, yes, but joys nonetheless, in Corin or in Lubin when he's banter with Lubin, which every single time they meet, they come up with more in creative insults to throw at one another. So there is some banter, there is some light at the end of the tunnel for Temper, but he's too scarred, he wallows too much in despair, and he's consumed by his guilt because he thinks Dassem is dead, right? Because he swore to give his life for Dassem, and then when that time came, he left him to wander. Dassem asked him to, he agreed and whatnot, but the point is, for all he knows, Dassem could be dead and he's to blame.
So wouldn't you just call it survivor's guilt? Why go to post-traumatic stress disorder?
I think because he gets nightmares from Yigatan, right? It's not just survivor's guilt. I think that's part of it, yes. But I think a big part of it is that he has PTSD from Yigatan because he was betrayed. He was almost killed repeatedly.
Yeah.
He is a wanted man, and he constantly lives in a state of paranoia where he has to look behind his back. The first thing he thinks of when he sees Claws dock up at Malaz Harbor 3 days ago from present day is, are they here for me? They're not, but he doesn't know that, and that's the first thing that crosses his mind. Not, they're here to kill Kellanved, they're here for me, because Shirley has finally reached down her long list of enemies, and she has gotten to my name, and I am going to die. So he elects that he's going to spend his entire night with the bottle of Canis Red that he hides on his bed, and instead, Corin essentially abducts him, locks him up with Faro and Trenek, and the rest of the book happens. So Temper, after he gets away, he could still theoretically leave and go back to his room, get drunk, and then go to sleep. Instead, after he deals with everything, with a squad of, I don't imagine they're bridge burners, they're more like recruits, essentially loyalists, because that's what they are, that's what Ash and Corin are, like, they're loyalists.
No, I feel they're definitely bridge burners.
They might be.
One has a tattoo, one has a silver sigil, and they have munitions. Right? They chase the hound with a...
They might be. I guess they are.
Yeah, they use it multiple times, so they're definitely bridge burners.
There's a group of bridge burners in the city which are loyalists to Kellanved the Dancer.
Yeah.
And essentially, they're here to, if not kill Shirley, at least make sure she doesn't kill their masters. That's one group. The other group is the Shadow Cultists, which you mentioned. Pralt and the like, which Temper also comes across later. And they heal him from the hound attack, which happens, and then Temper falls into another flashback because, as I said, PTSD. But to go back to Pralt, so what do you think is Pralt's deal? Obviously, there's quite the obvious one of, Dancer is my master and I want to help my master. But...
I really thought Pralt was Dancer. For a good while I thought that. Because it's all described in the same way, right?
They look the same.
Yeah.
Hooded figure with stuff and magic. Is that explicable?
He talks the same way too,
Because they're both psychopaths, apparently. They both speak in a lazy, arrogant way, apparently.
It was intentionally misleading, I thought Dancer came into the story so early. But yeah. What did you ask about Pralt?
So what did you think of him? He's the leader, supposedly, of the Shadow Cult. And presumably, he is taking commands from Dancer, but is also running errands for him, like killing Oleg, or...
Yeah, he's doing all the dirty work for them.
So, go on.
Actually, I have a question.
Yes?
Who force-healed Temper? Because obviously Shadow Throne hasn't ascended by then. So how did these cultists get him healed that quickly, Temper?
I don't actually know. It's not Denul, I don't think. They would know.
Because he's nearly dead and his armor is in such tatters that Kiska thinks that there's no way this guy could have survived that attack. So she's convinced that he's some monster roaming around, right?
He's a ghost. Yeah. That's also a great idea from Cam, to make our two protagonists meet, but not exactly. And one just thinks that she's dead. So I don't actually know the answer to that. I think there might, we know Shadow Throne heals a few people throughout the series, but I don't know if mortal Shadow Throne could do that. So I have actually no idea how Pralt might have healed them. We'll just square it away as he did, moving on.
No, but they had to go out of their way to heal Temper, right? Was it that essential for their plan? So did they move Temper to Malaz City by some other means?
That's another good question.
How did they get all these things to happen? Isn't it? If Temper had died, they really didn't have a replacement. They needed somebody as strong as him to face the Dead House Guardian.
Yeah.
They didn't have any other option, right? There was no plan B.
Yeah. I don't believe so, yeah.
So, did they have a hand in making sure Temper came to this island? Or maybe if he was somewhere else, they would have probably influenced him with some other way and brought him here. Who knows?
I think Coop is an island full of veterans anyway. So they just went for the best veteran they could find, which was Temper in this case, because he's known for being stalwart, iron-willed, and very hard to kill. So I don't actually know how Kelvin and Dancer knew Temper was Malazan. I imagine Corin might have told them, right? So once they knew and were certain he was there and he was going to stay, then they could start planning around Temper being in the city and using him to defeat the Death House Guardian.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
So, okay, we get past the hound attack. Pralt heals Temper, and then Temper armors up with archaic armor from 100 years ago, right? And the only thing that identifies him as a member of the Soul is his helmet. Temper is now armored up, he's basically got maimed, his armor's in tatters, and now he has to go rescue Corin for whatever reason, because he thinks that's important to him, right? So, let's pause on Temper, and let's to our other protagonist, who's going to find himself eventually in Monk's Hold, in the wrong place at the wrong time. So you've told me you actually quite like Kiska.
Yeah. No, if you ask her, she's going to say she was at the right time at the right place, right?
I'm sure she will. That's what makes her endearing.
Kiska was an extremely interesting character. Full disclosure, I didn't like her at all the first time I read it. Because I'm at that age where I don't want to read about teenagers, right? But it was not tropey. So I could, actually like her, actually connect with this type of character. And, usually in YA, you have all these characters who are either extremely smart and extremely competent, and all the rest of them are too dumb to keep up with her. Or either they make her somebody who is extremely insecure about herself and doesn't know where she stands in the world, right? These are the types of characters you see. But Kiska was not like that. She was just a nice character who happens to be young,
Yeah.
She herself knows her value. She knows that she has a natural talent for magic, even though she's too stubborn to follow instructions and, get proper training. She knows her knife skills are good, right? She doesn't fear fighting anyone. She goes around stabbing people and shooting arrows at anyone she wants. Yeah?
Some dead ghost stands up to the apparition, like her first instinct is stab it or run away.
True, yeah. That's Kiska. Right? And she's pretty smart, She's not dumber than the reader or somebody that you feel superior over. Because I was trying to keep up with her, basically. Because she sees some new character and figures out, yes, this is him. Is he really here and all that? And I have to think, yeah, probably she's recognizing this is Dancer, and it just confirms for me, this character has to be Dancer. And here she has figured out that this, this particular scene is going on about Kellenwed and things like that. So I found that really interesting. It was nice to follow her POV. Yeah. What did you think?
I mean, I've read her before. She appears in the Bonehunters once.
Yeah.
We saw this as a bodyguard to Dassem. Spoilers. So we know she's going places, which is good because she deserves it. We see as much in End of Knives, and she's competent. She's good at what she's doing. And so, one thing that's endearing to Kiska is she actively heads off to find her destiny, or what she thinks is her destiny. She doesn't wait for things to happen around her. She actively seeks them out. She sees a claw and her first thing is, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
I want to go offer my services to that guy. She sees an official which has certainly come to the islands. It's like, I want to go offer my services to the official. Currently, what she's doing is essentially keeping track of smugglers and petty criminals in Malazan and reporting to Subfespel. And for her, that's not enough. That's not clear. That's not nearly enough for someone of her talent. So the first time that happens, where someone comes up to her and she wants to be recruited, she gets turned down flatly by the Napan Claw, who I don't actually know who he is.
You don't know? I had that question.
I don't actually know if he's a named character in the series.
Because it goes into such detail, It's a Napan guy with curly hair and stuff.
He doesn't ring a bell. But that Claw basically flatly rejects her. He tells her to report to the local subfist and then scoots.
Yeah.
And she's very bummed out by that. And she's like, no, screw everything. I'm going to a gala. Before I go to a gala, she finds something else. She finds Tyson and his bodyguards to follow. And she follows them and she notices someone else is following them. And she almost happens upon a shadow cultist. So she can actually hide and navigate the streets quite easily and with a lot of agility and skill without being spotted by people who want to spot her. On quite a few occasions, she almost dies. She gets garroted when she finds Oleg, right? By the shadow cultist. Oleg saves her and then she continues. She goes to find Tyson. She finds Tyson meeting someone else, and then the bridge burners find her and almost also have her executed until the shadow cultists intervene and there's a battle and they have to leave. And she keeps going.
Yeah.
She's almost died twice on this day. She then sprains a knee. She's possibly hunted by hounds. Gala tells her to stay inside, and she does the exact opposite. She completely ignores conventional wisdom because she wants to be something more, and that's endearing, that's compelling, that's good character work.
Do you see something there? She leaves Agela's safety because she says she has to give this message to Teshran, right?
Yes.
It's as good as temper. That's what he does. He's putting himself in danger just because he gave a word to somebody. So that's what Kiska is doing. I don't know. I felt they were two mirrors of the same character. He at the end of his career and she at the beginning. Equally stubborn, equally competent.
That is actually a very good point I hadn't considered. That is very true. And if you look for similarities, there's plenty.
There are, yeah. The one thing which I liked about Kiska here is, she had so many options open to her. At the end of that night, she could have offered her services to Surly. She could have given in to Kellenwed's, I don't know what he was trying to do. He was compelling her to enter the dead house, right? So if she had entered, would she have been the next guardian? Or would she have entered the Shadow Realm with him and, been another minion or something?
That is another great question. I don't know. I think I don't think she could become the guardian because she might be a prisoner of the house.
She's not powerful enough to become a prisoner.
I don't know. I don't know what the Azath thinks. Maybe the Azath was hungry that day and said, I'll take whatever I can get.
No,
I don't know.
the Azath kicked her out because it was just Kellen who trying to bring her in. Right? She gets some shock-like thing and she falls back. She tries to follow him,
right.
But she can't.
That's another thing to ponder. Maybe she could have become the next Sorry before Sorry was a thing.
Oh, that's a really good point.
No, really. She could have become...
Yeah,
she could have become like Assassin of Ahas's Death, Shadow.
Dancer could have, adopted her and trained her properly and sent her to kill Surly. Who knows?
Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, now the two of them, after Kiska almost died 4 times, and Temper also died almost died 4 times, at the hands of many different people, hounds, cultists.
Yeah, but do you realize one thing with Kiska? She's not like blindly running into danger. She does run away quite a few times. She sees a hound, she knows she can't face it, she runs away.
She hides.
Yeah, so that's pretty smart on her part.
She still gets outsmarted often and possibly outnumbered. She tries to, from a hiding point, from a vantage point, look on and eavesdrop conversation that gets found out because, well, when 20 people have to take a perimeter, it's pretty easy to cover it. Versus one person who just randomly hasn't actually seen them. But she doesn't actively look out for danger. The one time she does, she almost gets assaulted.
No. Yeah.
So she learns, on top of everything else, she has learning experiences, and she learns from her experiences. Again, compelling character work. So, after all of this, after her many encounters with a lot of different people this night, ghosts like Oleg, priests, claws, cultists, soldiers, all of that, even Hound, Kiska decides to go against every conventional wisdom, every piece of advice he's got, and go to Moxhold, where I think, who was it? Was it Tysron? Was it Agela that tells her that to not go into Moxhold if she doesn't find Tysron before then?
That's Agela, yeah.
And she does, because she's like, I'm not gonna stay out of this.
Yeah.
And then she goes into the hold, Hata finds her, ties her up, leaves her outside. Then she breaks out of that, and it's like, I'm not staying out of this. I'm going to find you. I have a message for you.
Yeah. See, the point is, nobody is surprised when she actually follows them, right?
Yes, yeah, I guess.
They're like, oh, you're here. Okay. Even when she reaches the ship at the end, right? When she catches the message cutter, nobody's really surprised that she made it in time. Seal doesn't even give her the message. Do you remember?
Yeah, she figures it out on her own.
Yeah.
Like, and then, the message. Yeah, what about the message? Oh, yeah, I'll tell you later. Oh, I think the message is that they're down at the wharf. Yeah, I should remember where we're going.
Yeah. He was just trying to delay her, so that in 2 hours they would have left and she'll be stuck in the island. She figures it out. So that's what. She's quite powerful. And under Tatian, I think she'll be extremely powerful mage. And I hope we see her. Yeah?
I think if she wanted to be a mage, she could very easily be a mage indeed, yes. I think she could be pretty good.
But she doesn't choose to be a mage, is it?
I mean, she already denied the Gala once, who is also an adept of the Third Warren.
But she regrets it, right? She feels bad that she never did all the exercises that Agela wanted her to do. I thought under Tatian she will just, start up her learning again. No?
I cannot answer that. I mean, again, if she wanted to, I think, especially with someone like Tysron as teacher, she could very easily be a good mage.
Okay, so I'm just getting that she's not doing any of those things.
I think we'll see going forward. I repeat, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I'm already disappointed.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing. When she enters the room with Surly surrounded by the autotaural dust, it doesn't really affect her, right?
I didn't notice that, to be honest. I don't think she got that close to be affected.
Maybe she was just at the door.
I think so. I think Tysron told her to stay back, and then he went forward to greet Surly. We'll get to that scene in a bit, because before that, we see Kiska and Temper essentially meet, with Kiska seeing Temper and Temper being busy. First of all, we see the scene from Kiska's perspective, where an armored giant comes up and starts beating 2 claws, right? It just scratches off a wound like it's nothing and keeps going.
Yeah.
And then we see Temper's perspective where it's like, okay, I don't actually know if this guy is possum. I'm just gonna bet he is, say the line, and then hope And then he's right. And then he gets shot. He gets a throwing knife in his back, scratches his back like, oh, that hurts. It's really good writing.
I really like that scene so much, Kiska thinks this is some big badass monster, He gets a knife in his back and he keeps fighting and all. And that guy is just trying hard not to scream.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that shows Temple, despite how stubborn and how strong he is, he's still human.
Yeah.
It's people don't like this.
Oh, that was enjoyable. That scene was really nice. Yeah. She sees him a second time at the dead house when he pulls the dying claw to escape the house.
Yeah. Which then brings us to before we get to the scene at the dead house, first we have to tackle the scene of Temper going up to the throne room, presumably of Moxhold.
Is that the throne room? It's just a hall. Oh, just because Surly sits on a chair, you think that's a throne room?
Well, it was the throne room of Mok when he ruled the island.
That I don't know that. Even Kiska doesn't know that. She just thinks it's a hall.
It is a hall now, presumably, because they no longer rule from here, but we used to be a throne room. Semantics. Point is, Temper moves up, finds Dancer.
Yeah.
Dancer and Kerenfed from the Book of the Fallen are very different in this book, right?
No.
No? You don't think so?
I don't think so, because the first time, Dancer goes through a big transformation after possessing Sorry. So till the time he possesses Sorry, and even till the time he stabs Paran, so even up till then, he's just an arrogant assassin. That's it. I don't think he has any shred of humanity till he leaves Sorry, and I don't know, and then he starts self-reflecting probably. So I didn't see much difference between the early Dancer and the Dancer we see here. He's as ruthless as always, right? This is how they made an empire and did all the things they did, presumably in PTA. Why did you think there was so much difference? Are you thinking about Cotillion after his change of heart and becomes nicer and all that?
That's one thing. The other is we learn of Dancer as what we mostly learn of characters in the Book of the Fallen have now quote-unquote died in comparison to characters present. So Dancer gets very often contrasted to the Claw or Surly. So we learn mostly through Apsala, which is not the most consistent narrator. We learn mostly through her memories of what she thinks of Dancer. And some of those memories might have been imparted falsely by Dancer, right? The other thing is we learn from the Bonehunters again about Dancer from Urka when Apsala visits him. Essentially, he says that Dancer was a man of honor and he wouldn't lie and he liked him even though he was a bastard or something like that.
No, I think this is all just the old guard being biased.
That might be the case, honestly. But exactly, that's what I mean. In the portrayal of the character in the Book of the Fallen is different from Land of Knives. The character is consistent, the portrayal is different, right?
So obviously there is going to be some changes.
Of course. And that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
The character that we see in the Book of the Fallen is vastly different than the character that we see in Knight of Knives. There's very few characters that actually stay consistent. One of them is Lubin, because he's just a hunchback gatekeeper.
I don't remember Lubin in the Book of the Fallen.
He's Nithas Gates when Kalam and Milala are going up Moxhold.
Does he have a big line or something?
I think Kalam knows him. Point is, he's just a hunchback gatekeeper and potential veteran, right? So, at the end of the day, not much else to say about him. But all of the important characters, so Dancer, Kerenved, Surly, Tyshren, are vastly different. For example, Tyshren in this book is very much so different than what we see of Tyshren later, right? Think of Tyshren in Gardens of the Moon.
We see Tyshren through Tattersail, who just hates him.
That's what I mean! Again, I will say this one more time. Yeah. I think the character is consistent. I think the portrayal is different. And that's what we're discussing.
So let's just look at the character. Because, Tattersail could be wrong. But whereas Kiska doesn't have an agenda. The way she's seeing Tyshren is the way he is. Okay, she could be a little biased because he gives her a job and all.
Yeah. There is a certain person that really dislikes Tyshren. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah. No, but see, in Memories of Ice, he nearly sacrifices himself to save Silver Fox or Whiskey Jack.
And he feels guilty. the point is, Tyson can be a lot of things, right? He can be kind, compassionate, nice to Kiska,
He is nice, that's it.
or he could be a calculating bastard.
Oh, he has nothing to calculate. He has no ambitions.
How does he not have ambitions?
He's already the Imperial Mage. What else is he going to do?
We'll see, but the point is Tyson could have higher ambitions. And everyone talks about this, how Tyson sees himself as neutral, but everyone else kind of thinks he's playing for himself.
No, but he actually lets it slip, right? That he was supporting Kellerwood. Even though he had a screen of neutrality, he was still supporting the old Emperor. No?
I don't remember. What I do remember is he went to a Yale and essentially said, I don't care about the residents of Malazan. We touched on this earlier.
He was just playing his strength,
I mean, yes, but the point is, Tyson isn't necessarily a great guy.
No, but Agela doesn't believe him. She knows he's not going to step away like that. If they fall, there is no way he's going to just stand aside and let the island fall. She doesn't believe him.
Maybe.
He's a nice guy, end of story.
I really don't think the story ends there, but his portrayal is more positive in this book. Another thing which caught my eye, I think I told you this, when Kiska says, I saw the two of them go into the dead house.
Yeah.
Tyson says, no, you didn't. But I did. But no, you didn't, because me and Shirley agreed that you didn't.
Yeah.
We agreed that the two of them are dead. And they're gone. And it's not a problem anymore. And then Tyson becomes Imperial High Mage of Shirley, and then we see what happens in Pale. With the potential betrayal of the British burners, when in fact going after Nightchill, and he's trying to protect them, and the purges and all. And the point is, Tyson plays multiple games.
He doesn't.
How does he not?
Okay, see, the way he tells Kiska that we are agreed that these two died, isn't that the repeat of the dialogue he has with Shirley earlier? Like, he doesn't believe that they fell and died, right?
Of course he doesn't.
And Shirley somewhat wills him into believing that, yeah?
And Shirley knows he didn't.
Like, obviously, Kiska is too young to catch such subtlety, but Shirley just had to hint at it and he got it. Yeah, so these two have died, long live the Empress, and he just says hail, right?
Pretty much.
So it's just a repetition of the same thing. He has accepted her propaganda and he is now spreading it to others. He's being neutral. I don't think he has any major game going on. Should we take a break?
Yeah, sure. We were talking about Tyson, and we had to stop talking about Tyson.
And what a nice man he is, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. You know what? I'm willing to let that one slide.
Oh, thank you.
He's actually kind.
That's because, that's just the truth.
Right, of course it is.
Yeah. You know what I've been thinking? Because you keep apologizing for Shirley, I think I'll start defending Kellenwood from now on. He's not insane. He's just a misunderstood genius.
Is he now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
there is no argument against it.
I don't know if I agree with that.
But we'll have to read PTA.
We haven't read PTA yet, so we can't exactly, have an opinion on this.
But see, PTA is not complete, so we can think anything we want now.
I guess it's not complete, so technically speaking, Kellenwood might not be insane.
No, I read the first bit of Dancer's Lament. He's mad from page 1. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, that never stopped me, right? Because Shirley's pretty much always portrayed as a cold, calculating bitch, but I'm still here, So, go wild.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. After PTA, probably. So, what do you want to hit next?
What else is there? Alright, so what I wanted to touch on is, I think you mentioned at some point that Shirley might be an accomplice of the two, trying to ascend.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think you might know this, but first of all, there's a lot of claws in the area. We see remnants of a battle that occurred on the steps all the way up to the hall of Moxhold. We see the captain, or the sergeant that abducted Kiska early in the book, being killed by a claw. We see Ash, we see Corin, who is taken away by Temper at the behest of Dancer. We see
Yeah, just a minute, I just had this thought that, why was Corin saved into Shadow Realm? Because they wanted her, as bait to get temper, right?
Yes, presumably yes.
That is such,
They're manipulative.
it's pretty disgusting what these guys are doing.
Right? Now, I don't think it's above Shirley to be an accomplice in such disgusting acts.
No, I'm not talking about Shirley here. I'm just talking about these two, Dancer and Kellenwood.
We know these two are deplorable. Temper says it all the time. Like people who are aligned with Kellenwood have never been there when he's killing people or when his mass go on and slaughter cities.
They always have an explanation, right? Like why this happened? Because, something else happened out of his control and he's not to blame.
I never buy that, and I don't think you do either. But hey.
But no, I'm just wondering, how exactly they set this up with so much planning and so much precision to make sure that Temper walks away. And what do you think would have happened if Temper had gone up the steps, Like Dancer says, if you come upstairs, you're going to be a participant. What do you think Temper would have done there? Would he have helped the old king or the old emperor? Obviously not. He wouldn't want to help Shirley either. I really don't know what he would have done there.
Fuck, I don't know. I think, going from context clues, I think his vendetta with Shirley is much bigger than his vendetta with Kellenberg. He blames both equally, but Shirley ordered the assassination of Dassem anyway, and she tried to kill him. So I think probably I would Shirley. But
yeah.
I don't think he'd do it out of the kindness of his heart, so he's not particularly usable for the two of them, right? Because after he kills Shirley, then he's going to turn on them.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
And even if he does, how did they get to the dead house if Temper's not there to distract Jenna? They don't. That'd be bad.
Yeah, so one more doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Did these two actually die?
No.
Or did they just use Warren to go there?
They presumably used the Warren.
Is there any evidence?
They're still alive.
No, but Oleg dies and he's still there inside that house as flesh and blood as them. And Kiska even thinks that inside the AZ yard, there is no difference between spirit and flesh. Right? So they could have died. Maybe they didn't die. But there's really nothing to say this happened or that happened conclusively.
That is true. But it does raise the interesting question of if they got to Emerlan and claimed the throne while spirits animated by the Shadow Moon, would they still ascend? In a way, we see this happening a lot because people have to often die before they can ascend completely.
But when Kiska sees Oleg inside the Shadow Realm, he claims that he is now the ruler of this realm. But it doesn't happen. I really have no idea, what was missing with Oleg's ascension and why exactly these two ascended. As you say, maybe because they are still alive.
I don't know. Things to ponder or things to ask or for the authors.
I don't think we'll get an answer. It's open to interpretation. Maybe they died.
Maybe they died, but I don't really think it matters either. If they died, it would be more convincing, right? Because Shirley actually ended up succeeding in killing them, and the fact that they ascended is just crap,
You just want the satisfaction that Shirley succeeded in something.
I didn't say that. I did not say that.
Yeah, and another thing, Oleg keeps telling that these two are going to lose everything in order to seal their victory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was it meant that they had to die in order to ascend.
I mean, I saw that a lot as well. So it can either mean their lives or their empire. Their lives probably sounds cool. So maybe they did actually die.
I don't think they bothered about the empire at all. I mean, everyone knew that, right?
They keep getting asked this, like, are you here for the empire? And they're like, no, we don't care about the empire. Me and Kellan would both see further. So no, I don't think they were here for the empire, and I don't think that's what Oleg meant. So yeah, maybe they did actually die.
And that's why I keep thinking that Shirley was an accomplice, because they didn't care about the empire. If she wanted it, she could have it. Except for that one scene in Gardens, I have no evidence to say that Shirley and these two were, not acting together. We see this animosity between Shadow and the Empress, the beginning of the story. If that was not there, then you can just imagine that they're all accomplices and everyone benefited, right? These two got to ascend and she got an empire I don't see why that couldn't have happened.
Right. So, because I have obviously thought about this a lot, there is a line in House of Chains from Cotillion to Lothario in which he says, Shirley can have the Empire if she wants it. Shadow Throne still continues to torment her because he finds it funny. It tickles him purple because he's crazy. But Dancer, by HOC, doesn't actually seem to care. However, in Gardens, it is very clear they have a plan to kill her. Right? Sorry is meant to kill Laseen. And similarly, Kalam. Kalam is actually sent by Quickben because Quickben knows what happened and he's sending Kalam to see for himself because he wouldn't believe him and shit. But there is a chance that he might be somewhat aided or persuaded by external forces, so to speak, since Amanas later appears to him and says, I'm gonna help you, and so I think there's a very clear animosity there between the two, as you said, between Laseen and at least Kellanfed. I don't know if Dancer actually cares enough, but he has bigger plans, right? Since the Ascension from the start was a bigger plan.
The start of Night of Knives?
The start of whenever they disappeared, because we know they're missing. At the start of Night of Knives, they've been gone for a year, many years, I don't know. Shirley is the Imperial Regent because the two of them are gone, and clearly they're planning for something bigger than the Empire.
No, what I feel is that thing with Sorry's possession and all that in Gardens, I think that was something that had to be retconned. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit with the rest of the story.
You don't think so?
No.
We can have this discussion another time because, spoilers, I think it's perfectly consistent. He's been missing since at least then, right? So he's been missing for a few months at least. And Shirley had time to put in her edict of anti-magery in that time. So, presumably, he'll be missing for a while. A year, 2 years, 5 years. A long time.
I think it must be longer because, they had to plan all these things in.
Yes, obviously. So, they no longer care about the Empire. Shirley is running the Empire herself for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, but then why take revenge? Why set the hounds on this poor fishing village?
Because it tickles them purple. Because Kellanfed is insane. Because
Dancer does the same thing. He is the one who actually possesses her, right?
Dancer goes along with the plan, I think.
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense. That's all I'm saying. They could have just worked together and, you take the Empire, you're going to be a better Empress, keep it, and just let us go. Keep your claws away from us and we are going to ascend today.
That, I think, is putting way too much faith in Shirley, to be honest.
Ouch.
Honestly, Shirley doesn't trust anyone. Her temper, I think, says that her motto is no witnesses. So if she let them go and didn't kill them, well, who knows? Maybe they come back one day for her empire, and she wants that empire. Even if they told her a few dozen times that you can have the empire, whatever, I don't care. She still would feel threatened.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just saying that even if they offered her the empire, I wouldn't put it past them to come back and try to take it back from her. So obviously, she can't trust them, right?
We see in the main series that at the very least some of her fears are justified. That you say sorry and whatnot. Even if it's not consistent with her character, at least Shirley isn't entirely in the wrong in believing that they'll come back to kill her one day.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think they would be an accomplice. Moreover, we see from Kiska's perspective part of the assassination, and right after it presumably happened, before Tyson and Kiska woke up and see the aftermath, we hear a shriek of sorts, of presumably a female, which is probably Shirley. And then Shirley has her whole thing of long live the Empress and they're dead because I said so, kind of thing.
That was a nice scene, right? They walk in and see her sitting and her hand being bandaged by a claw, kneeling in front of her and all that.
She points at Ash, the body, the bridge burner officer on the ground, which just killed. It's like acid, and she bandages her hand up because presumably he threw acid at her to kill her, right?
It's hard to hurt her, right? She's a claw. No, but that was a nice scene when they all walk in and it's decided that she's the next empress in that the way that scene is set up.
So, for example, the scene is set up. Tyson and Kiska both come up, and Shirley tells Possum to organize a search for the corpses, for the bodies, and then Tyson tells her something to the effect of, "You can't really be sure that you killed them and whatnot." And she snaps at him, "I'm quite certain. I'm certain enough." And they are dead. And she says, "I don't care how it seems to you. It is over. I am Imperial Regent no longer. I will take the throne and my new name to rule it by. What say you to that?" He says nothing.
Yeah.
And then a clock goes in and says, "Hail the Empress." And then Tyson thinks some longer, and then he goes, "Hail indeed." So Tyson is pretty certain that they're not actually dead. And he is gauging Shirley, like, do I actually tell her? Do I go on her wrong side? Does she actually believe that she killed them?
No, I think he knows very well that even Shirley knows that they have not died.
Yes, and he gauges her, like, do I now tell her? I mean, she knows probably, so I better stay on her, on her right side. And then there's the speech with Kiska about, we agree that she's dead, that they're dead,
Yeah.
so they're dead. So Shirley knows, Tyson knows, the two of them actually make it, Temper protects them and becomes the new guardian of the dead house, and everyone apparently everyone wins. And then there's Edgewalker, who's like, oh, guests. And the first thing Garabet does when he arrives at the Shadow House is like, this won't do, and changes it to his own palate, like to fit his taste. And then he tries to order Edgewalker around, like, guys, you don't command me. What do you mean? I'm just as much a slave to Shadow as you are.
When he threatens him with the hounds, he tells him that the hounds and himself, Edgewalker, they're all equal shadow slaves. So, the hounds are not going to attack me.
Like he says, Edgewalker, you may be our guide. I think not. The old man paused, blinking. I'm sorry, you said, I do not take your orders. A walking stick poked Edgewalker at his chest. He did not quite recall exactly when it appeared in the old man's hand. Perhaps I should summon the hounds to tell you limb from limb. They would not do so. Truly. Why? Because we are all kin, slaves to Shadow. But remember, and then Kellervid tells him, but remember, while you are slave to Shadow, I command Shadow. And then Edgewalker just stays silent because he's seen this shit play out like 12 times. Everyone is the same. We're like, God damn it. You could see how hopeful he was for change at the start of the book, and now he's like, oh, them again.
You know what would be really wild? There are 3 more books in Path to Ascendancy, right? What if the last book is set much after the Book of the Fallen, and then we see Kellenwood and Dancer being displaced by some other new ruler?
Right?
And it ends with Edgewalker just walking around. There's a real possibility that can happen, right?
My favorite imaging of this is they enter Emurlan, they go to the Shadow House, the keep, the palace, whatever. They just knock on the door slightly, and like it's Kellervid Dancer dressed in rags, just like sitting there, looking on sheepishly, like, can we come in? And Edgewalker just opens the door, just sighs, like, oh god damn it, them again.
I think it would be, more fitting if these two get trapped somewhere in Shadow. And there's a new, the whole thing starts again. Because, Edgewalker thinks that none of these fellas stop to think why the Shadow Throne is empty all the time.
Exactly.
So there is something wrong. The throne itself might be kicking them out. Like the one ring from Lord of the Rings. The ring itself wants to go back to its master. So the throne itself wants to be empty probably. So it just keeps kicking them out and new rulers come in all the time.
And I think by time of the Book of the Fallen, Kellervid actually seems to understand that, because he learned the hard way when Edgewalker essentially told him, you don't command me, that no one else should try for the throne. And we see they either try in Midnight Tides and House of Chains and the Bonehunters. And we see the Company of Shadow, which is Minala and her kids. We see Thrall, we see Onrak, we see Traveler on Drifta Valley protecting the Throne of Shadow from the Eater. So Kellenved seems to understand that if anyone ought to rule Shadow, it better be someone who understands why Shadow is the way it is. And we can see that by the Bonehunters, which is the first time I think that Edgewalker appears in the main series, Cotillion is somewhat made of Edgewalker an acquaintance. They understand each other. They get the idea of you don't command me, and they talk to Edgewalker not necessarily as an equal, but as a guardian of sorts.
Mm-hmm. I didn't pick up on that because...
What I mean is, Cannonbird and Dancer both seem to understand that, maybe Shadow really should not be ruled directly, and they are protecting Shadow from being usurped like they did themselves to Shadow. So the cycle might be broken. The cycle of new ruler gets deposed, new ruler gets chained, see Jeddel, which we see in the prologue. Yes?
When Edgewalker thinks that he used to rule Shadow before, do you think he was talking about Emerlan itself? Or this Shadow Realm, the one we have now?
Absolutely no idea.
Yeah, because it's been so long, right? I feel it must be, I don't know what we are spoiling here, but it must be before the Sundering, right? It must be the proper Emerlan is what Edgewalker must have ruled. Because he still calls it Emerlan and he says he's at the border of Emerlan.
Right? What does that mean? His name is Edgewalker. He walks the edges of Emerlan, presumably.
I really don't know. None of us know what is going on there.
Now we're getting way off topic and way off the spoilers for this episode.
Yeah, can I mention do you have anything more?
I don't think so.
I want to talk about the guest appearance of Aragan, the guy from Gardens of the Moon, and also Memories of Ice.
Aragan appears everywhere. Aragan's like every book that has the Empire has Aragan in there somewhere. He's great. He's in Deadhouse Gates. He's in the Memories of Ice.
Is he in Deadhouse Gates?
Yeah, he's the face in Moxhold. When Kalam and Feeler come up, and he's like, yeah, nothing's here. And then a claw comes behind him and like, oh, yeah, surprise. He's everywhere. It's great.
Then from Moxhold, he gets on a ship to go to Aren in Memories. Not Aren, sorry, to
Coral to negotiate terms and shit. And it's okay.
They're just going wild with that character, just put him wherever he needs to go. Yeah, but Aragan and Agela, that confrontation was very nice. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kiska watches from above and...
Where Agela kind of hints at him like, there's other mages in this town you could go find. Could you maybe leave?
She threatens him so nicely, so sweetly that, Are you trying to teach your soldiers or are you trying to lose them?
And then Aragan pulls off his thing and then there's red dust flowing. I think you brought that up. It's like, who is threatening who here? What's the dynamic?
Yeah, but then he probably is carrying around Ototerrel because he shouldn't get headaches, right?
Oh, that is true. Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
That's what I thought, because they're going after mages and he can't be...
Right, because he's sensitive to that. Yeah, you can see... Oh my god. See, this is why we do these episodes, because I missed that.
It was just funny to see. And Agata is such a nice character, She just tells him... And he says he has 5 mages with him. And, it still doesn't stop her.
Of course it doesn't. She can probably kill all 5 of them. She needs to.
Hey, did you see on the sub, someone had a theory that this fisherman is Tom Bombadil or something? From Lord of the Rings?
What?
Because he also sings and he has a wife who is singing. He also goes on a boat and, they had some similarities like that, and that was a theory.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea.
This is something funny.
What? Okay, I had not thought of that. Okay.
Yeah, nobody thinks of that. I think it's just, just for fun.
Alright.
Right. Jenna? Is there anything to talk about Jenna?
One thing I found interesting about Jenna is something that I don't think ever comes up again, the don't trust the Jaghood.
Dealing with the Jagged. That is a saying, yeah.
And the other thing is, Jenna promises Templar everything. He promises, do you want power? I can carve out a continent-wide kingdom for you. And he doesn't even consider that. He doesn't think about that. It's not something that he cares about. And then she brings up Dassem, and he loses his shit.
No, see, Dancer was a much better negotiator. He offered him just Corin. You can save her and then you do what I want. Jenna just starts promising him everything, Who's going to believe her?
To be fair, Jenna has the riders coming, and if the riders arrive and she gets out, she's fine. She can do whatever.
That's not the way you negotiate, right? You can't just say, I'm going to give you any single thing you ask. Who's going to believe you? You can say something practical.
I mean,
I'll give you Mox Hold, or I'll let you rule Malazan. Something believable.
Who knows? Who knows how powerful Jack can be? Who knows?
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter what power she has, but the point of that negotiation is to convince him. And do you remember the scene? Temper thinks, he thinks that Kellenwed can, stand in front of you and promise moon spawn.
Temper thinks about this stuff, and his immediate thought about Kellenwed is like, this reminds me of every other noble that has ever dealt with Kellenwed. They got beheaded. I'm not accepting this. And then Edgewalker shows up, and Temper is like, okay, maybe. And then Jenna brings up Dassem, and he's like, can you confirm this? I'm like, no, I cannot confirm or deny the survival of this person. It's great, and it's pretty obvious that it's a last-ditch effort from Jenna because her power is waning, and a South House might take her, and she needs to get out, or she'll die, or not die. This is a South House; it's Power Wars, so.
No, the whole thing was very nice between Jenna and Edgewalker. Both of them, I don't know why they were compelled not to lie.
Yeah, they're both extremely powerful beings and neither of Temper understands neither of them, and
neither of them are lying outright to get what they want. They're just dancing around the truth. She says one thing and then he says something equally vague.
Is she lying? Oh, technically it's true, but she's not telling the whole truth.
Both of them. We don't know what Edgewalker is up to.
Jenna says something, Temper asks him, is that true? And Edgewalker just goes yeah, technically, in some sense, it's the truth. It's great. It's a great scene.
It's very nice, yeah. You really can't trust either of them, and we are like Temper in the middle.
One is a self-identified elder god, and the other is Jaghood, and Temper knows not to deal with Jaghood, which I don't see this actually ever brought up again, but in this case it counts because Jenna is very deceitful and lying and desperate. So,
but then, do the other cultures even know Jaggeds exist?
I don't know.
As you say, this saying doesn't come up again, but
that is true.
Maybe some scholars know that this is one of the founding races, but I don't think anyone knows that they actually existed or still exist and all.
Yeah, I think they're considered to be extinct by Council of the Moon. Maybe.
Yeah, till the tyrant shows up, raised.
Raised or raised. But the point is, raised is dead, so technically we're still extinct.
Is he dead?
He's dead, and then they bring him back to fight Drake.
He's not dead. He's just trapped in his warren, with his powers kept separate. I don't think he's dead.
He's as close to dead as can be for a Jaghood. Let's put it that way.
He's almost dead.
His body's in a barrow and his power is somewhere entirely else.
It's not his body. He's trapped, He's kept magically hidden. Yeah?
I haven't read Gods of the Moon in a while. Don't judge me. Everyone, when he's in the Asaf house, everyone calls him undead. I don't know. Maybe he's not actually dead.
Yeah, maybe. But
We got off topic again. Anyway. So, to conclude, I think, right? What's left? Temper is now the guardian of the dead house.
Oh, I have one more thing.
Yeah, go on.
Just one small thing. The munitions. Do you think these were Moran's munitions?
What?
The explosives these guys use?
Yes.
Yeah, do you think it's from the Moranth? They use one with Surly. I'm sure that was the bridge burners. Ash already has burn scars, so he had to have used munitions sometime in the past. And then to distract the hound, they again use munition. I didn't get that at the first, Do you remember that scene when Kiska thinks that this guy has a green fruit to distract the hound and tries to escape? It's only later on she realizes that, it was some explosive to try to hurt the hound. I'm sure it didn't get hurt, but...
Close enough. If it leaves, we're good, right? If one hound could leave because it could hit by chance, I'm pretty sure more ammunition would do him in well enough.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how long ago have these guys been using munitions, the Malazan Empire?
I think we find out in PTA, so I have no idea.
I thought Pale, the whole thing in Pale was a new thing, Wasn't there something in the epigraph that everything changed because the Malazans got into an alliance with the Moranth and they had access to explosives and all that?
What I do know is that it was in Karavaterain. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. It couldn't have been too long ago.
And here there is no mention of the word Moranth,
Really? Maybe not.
Did you see anywhere?
Temper actually knows what a Moranth means. There is a mention of Moranth munitions in Temper's flashbacks.
Oh.
And
so it was not a new thing.
So Temper knows of the Moranth, and I think Coop sells Moranth spirits, which are basically pure alcohol.
Okay, see, the thing is, both times it was Kiska's perspective, right?
Yeah, Kiska doesn't know what a Moranth munition is now.
Yeah, so because once it's Temper, then we know that it is Moranth munition.
Yeah.
So they've been together a long time then, Moranth and the Malazans.
I think we'll see. I have no idea. So, I think the most pertinent answer to conclude is, where does this book leave us off with? So, the duo of Kellenford and Dassem have ascended. They are now Cotillion and Namanas. Kiska is now in the employ of Tyshren. Temper is the guardian of the dead house. Obo is the Lobo in his tower, brooding. Agela is fine. Surly is now Laseen and Empress of the Malazan Empire. Tyshren is Imperial High Mage. Luben is still the gatekeeper of Moxov. Who else does that leave? Right, so I think that's all the characters that we actually care about. And if we're missing any, we'll see in the next book, I guess.
Right.
Since the nature of this book is mostly a flashback, we know most of this, right? We know that Kellenberg has ascended. We know Surly is now the Empress. We know Temper is the... Well, we don't, but we know that by the Bonehunters. We know Tyshren is the Imperial High Mage. What we don't know is what gives with Edgewalker, 1, and 2, what gives with the Riders.
Yeah.
Right? What do you mean, why are you killing us? You froze a ship and brought it down on a fisherman.
No, that's because he was stopping them from reaching their destination, right?
It's rhetorical questions. I'm...
Sorry.
Questions the fisherman would... Or the grandfather guy would ask of the rider, presumably. Well, we're killing you because you are dangerous to us, right? Because you're different. Because you freeze our souls and you kill us by proxy. You might notice that Ian goes to great lengths to show that the Storm Riders don't actually seem to care about the raider boat. They completely ignore Renistream and they just move past them.
Yeah.
And because of their nature, by proxy, they freeze the ship. When the fisherman goes to oppose them, then they actually get hostile. But before that, they don't actually seem to be hostile at all. So what gives with that, we'll find out in another book, not this book, because the book is over.
Oh, we have more to look forward. That's nice. Yeah.
So, I think that's about it.
That's it, yeah.
If you have anything more to add?
I just, just in the writing part of it, some of the sudden flashbacks were a little jarring for me.
I think a lot of the POV changes in the flashbacks might have been a bit jarring.
No, POV changes were fine, because he doesn't drag it like Erikson, right? You find out after 2 paragraphs that, this is Temper thinking.
Please don't get me started on this, please. I don't want to read 2 pages before I figure out who's talking.
Yeah, but then I started liking it actually.
Yeah, I mean, you get used to it.
Because, it made me think that why am I assuming this has to be this guy's thought? It could be anyone thinking these things. I liked it.
But Ian, instead, every POV starts with Temper did this, Kiska did that. Not...
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Let me know who's speaking beforehand and then we can get immersed into the world. I don't want to think about who is talking and why they're doing this and what the fuck is going on.
But then why do you want to know that? Why are you in a hurry to finish the book,
Okay.
Just relax. Just listen to somebody talking. Keep thinking about who it can be and then find out that you're wrong,
Alright, okay. Yeah.
And then you start thinking, why did you assume that it had to be this person thinking these thoughts,
Yes.
I don't know, at least From the whatever I remember, it was very nicely done in Midnight Tides.
I mean, I think he does very well. I think it's annoying, but he does very well.
Yeah, it's like, a small subversion basically. You see a new soldier come up and then they say, and then, after a page or something you find out it's a female soldier.
Yeah.
I don't know. Each time it pulls me out of it. I keep thinking, why did I assume that just because they say it's a captain? Why did I think it had to be a guy? So same way, the POVs were sort of like that for me. Like, why did I think that this had to be this other guy and not Udinas mostly? Mostly Midnight Tides was Udinas whining to himself.
You say whining, I think pondering the meaning of life or philosophy. But no, yeah, he was definitely whining. He was absolutely whining. I think this might be a discussion for another time.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Right, so thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed.
So that was a semi-serious look at the Night of Knives. Thank you so much for listening.
We hope you enjoyed the discussion, but do share your thoughts with us. So now, have a great day, and we'll see you soon.